It's raining now, so let's get in and check out the earthworm, the vermicomposting operation. A lot of guys like this one. Okay, follow me please. So, welcome here to VERMIGRAND. VERMIGRAND was outsourced from the Grand Farm in 2011. And we are focusing here on producing organic fertilizer, peat-free soil substrates, and compost tea. So that's not right. Not we are focusing on the production of vermicompost, but the earthworms are doing the job. Why do I mention that? Because we as humans, we cannot produce soil. We cannot create soil. If you talk to scientists, they tell you, okay, we can maybe make 2–3% of the microbes which are in a healthy soil, actually we can produce artificially, so in a lab, for example. But we cannot create soil like nature does, and heavily involved in this process are the earthworms. Let's check them out. So the earthworms are working here in our continuous flow system, and if you look inside these boxes, you will recognize you don't see anything. Check it out please. Do you see any worms? No worms to see, because the earthworms always avoid the light. But as soon as we check and as soon as we dig a little bit into, we can see the earthworms moving around and creating soil. So what we actually do is we follow a two-step process. We do a thermophilic composting process first, and then we add on a vermicomposting process. Let me explain how that works and why we do it. So the process is the following. We make large heaps like 3 meter wide, 1.5 meter high, and 30 meter long, and we put organic material together. Organic material is everything that has once lived, like leaves, like branches, like wood debris, like hay from alfalfa or clover, like grass clippings, things like that. So we put that together on large heaps, we water it, and then we turn it, we mix it. So we drive by with a compost turner who mixes the material, homogenizes the material together, and because of the right moisture content, the material starts to heat up. The reason for this heat up process is because the microbes start working on the organic material. The microbes start eating and munching on this material, and as you know, when you're working hard, you're sweating, so you're creating temperature, and this is what creates these hot temperatures like 65–70 degrees Celsius within a few days. And then we keep turning, so we bring in fresh air, we mix, we homogenize, we add some water if necessary, and we keep this process for a few weeks, and that's called the hygienization process. It's a thermophilic process, it's hot, and it has several benefits. On one side, it homogenizes the material. On the other side, it makes the material softer because it gets hot. And then the third point is the microbes start to decompose it, to make it softer, to make it more accessible for the earthworms later. And then one of the most important things, we have that high temperature. So this high temperature kills weed seeds, for example, but also pathogens. You have to consider human pathogens on one side, like Salmonella, E. coli, for example, but it also kills plant pathogens, like plant diseases. So this hygienization process is quite important for us. And then, after a short hygienization phase, we sieve off the material to 25 millimeter, for example, and then we bring it to this place and we feed the earthworms with this raw compost. So it's not a finished compost, but it's a raw compost. And this material is even pimped up a little bit sometimes if it's not fits the earthworm's needs. But then we spread the food for the earthworms, the thermophilic compost, we spread it on top of these bins, of these wooden bins, and every week we add another layer of, let's say, 5 to 7 centimeter material, and that makes it possible for our earthworms to come up and feed on this material. So when we always add another layer on top, it would, at the end, after a certain period, when we always add material, it would overflow and the bin would be full. This is not the case because on the top, in the bottom area, just like here, there is a grate. So the whole material lies on the grate. And as you can see now, then we harvest the material from the bottom, and the material can fall down on the concrete floor, can dry up, and later on is scratched to one side where we can put it through the sieve and make a premium product out of it. So there is very little disturbance done. We do not have any drying process. We do not have any grinding process. We just harvest it, let it dry naturally, pull it to one side, put it in a drum sieve, and then we have a premium product of 0 to 3 millimeter earthworm compost, which we also call biohumus. So again, food on top, harvesting at the bottom. When we harvest, the level, the surface area of the material drops down here, and we can add another layer of food. So when you consider earthworms, maybe what you have already learned about earthworms is that the earthworms, they live in the soil, and then they come up and they go down like 2.5 meters, and then they come up and they fetch some material from the surface and pull it into the soil, like leaves or grass clippings or straw or whatever. Yeah? This is not the earthworm that we are talking to. So when we talk about earthworms, we have to know, in Austria we have about 65 different species. 65 different species of earthworms, which are grouped in 3 different ecological groups. Here we have the epigeic worms. Epigeic earthworm means that they try to stay on the surface. They don't go like 2.5 meters deep. So these earthworms, if you consider they are in nature, they live in the forest, for example. And as you know, the forest soil is always covered by leaves, by branches, by organic material. And these earthworms, this kind of earthworms, these epigeic earthworms, they do not even go in the mineral soil, but they just live on top of the mineral soil, but at the bottom of the organic layer that covers the mineral soil. So these epigeic earthworms, they always try to be near the surface. You have seen they are not going onto the surface because they want to avoid the light, but they always are near the surface. And this is gives us the chance to work on a system like this, because the earthworms always stay in the top 10-15 centimeter, and we can harvest at the bottom without harvesting the earthworms with us. So this is really the benefit of the system that we are using here for large-scale production of earthworm compost. Other types of earthworms, like the aneic earthworms, these guys who are traveling vertically, so they have kind of a flat, an earthworm burrow where they try to stay their whole life in, and they come to the surface they check if they find some organic debris like leaves, straw, whatever. They pull it in the night, they turn around and they poop their earthworm casting like small crumbles on the surface, which you can find on your lawn, for example. And these are called the anaic earthworms. And there is a third group. So we have the epigeic earthworms we have here. We have the anaic earthworms traveling from the topsoil to the subsoil and back again. And we have the endogeic earthworms. So the endogeic earthworms, they don't have kind of a flat where they want to stay their whole life in, but they are just moving around like travelers, explorers. So they're moving around in the root zone, in the main root zone, like from 0 to 40, 50 centimeter depth. And they are looking for dead root material. So they are consuming this dead root material. And when they move, when they create these burrows, they fill it up again immediately with the earthworm casting. So 3 different groups of earthworms, 65 different species in Austria, and we work with these epigeic earthworms here. And outside, in the garden, maybe you check out the video about market gardening, about the soil pits. There you will find the other types of earthworms and you will see them, how we record them on video. So, why do we do that? This is the most important question. Why don't we produce thermophilic compost only? Because it's a good material, no question about that. But the reason why we process and why we feed this to the earthworms, why we take all that effort of the continuous flow system, feeding, harvesting, processing, is because earthworm compost is different, has a different quality from thermophilic compost. So what are the differences? Number one, you get higher nutrient levels. So the nutrient level of vermicompost is higher than with thermophilic compost. Number two, even if the nutrient level is the same, the plant available amount of nutrients in vermicompost is always higher than in thermophilic compost. But this is only the nutrient side. It's not really important for us. The most important thing that we see is the biodiversity. So, if you think about composting, what I explained earlier, is you have these high temperatures. So you kill all the plant pathogens, you kill all the human pathogens, you kill all the weed seed. And that doesn't happen in nature. So it's a technical process where we do that. We are happy to have these results. But you do not only kill the bad guys, you also kill the good guys. So it's not selective. Heat does kill a lot of species, a lot of organisms. And what we do not want to see is to kill the good ones. So as soon as we have that thermophilic process finished, as soon as the hygienization process is finished, we bring back the compost here to the vermicomposting site, and the earthworms and all the other animals like mites, spider mites, and pseudoscorpions and things like that, they all move in the fresh material. They all move in this thermophilic compost. And what they bring is they are covered with microbes, with beneficial soil microbes, and they transfer the microbes into the fresh material. So they bring biodiversity back into the compost. And then the earthworms start munching the compost, eating the compost, and their microbiome, their community of microbes, which they have in their digestion system, they are enriching this material with microbes. And when they poop it out, it is real soil, healthy soil. And this is what we are looking for. And what we want to get is this huge biodiversity. Why is it important? Number one, biodiversity is the reason why this planet is so beautiful. Biodiversity is the reason why this planet is so stable. And if you think about each and every different ecosystem on the planet, so think about Antarctica, think about the desert, think about temperate forest or rainforests. The reason why it's stable is because of biodiversity. Because in each and every ecosystem you have this huge amount of different species, starting with bacteria and fungi and going up with insects and later on to birds and animals and larger animals. So you have this huge amount of biodiversity, and that's the reason why it works, is because each and every organism is settling in on one place and is taking one empty space. If you remove biodiversity, like in industrial agriculture, where you only have one species left, like let's say wheat, when you have a disease coming in who would destroy the wheat plants or would kill the wheat plants, you immediately have 20, 30, 50% of loss in productivity. But if you think, for example, about a flower strip, a flower field, where you have 200 different species of plants growing, if there is a disease coming in, killing one species, it couldn't even reach out to the other plant with the same species, because the plants just are so far away from each other. So this flower system, this flower field is much more, the pasture, the grassland is much more resilient against diseases. If you have less biodiversity, the chance that a bad guy takes over the whole ecosystem is much, much higher than if you have biodiversity, where even the bad guys have to be careful not to be eaten, not to be consumed by another organism. So biodiversity is super important, and especially the soil microbiome, the microbes in the soil, the community of organisms in the soil, it's called the soil microbiome. This is really important, especially for plants, because it's acting like a toolbox. So you have to imagine when we have plants on this planet and people didn't care about plants, because like they do nowadays with putting fertilizer, spraying pesticides to keep the plants healthy. But that wasn't done, like even 100 years ago it wasn't done. But the hundred of millions of years before it wasn't done. So why could the plants survive? Because they were healthy and resilient. So they could survive because they had all the tools. And the tools are the microbes. And the plant is feeding the microbes. The plant is using the microbes when it is feeding it with root exudates. Root exudates are substances that are first produced through the photosynthesis process. So carbon dioxide is sucked up from the leaves. You have the chlorophyll, you have the sunlight, you have the water, sugar is produced, and then the sugar is converted in different other chemical substances. And then the plant puts these substances down through the root and spits it out more or less. It exudates them, and it's called root exudates, and it feeds the microbes. And not because it's so friendly, but because for a reason. Because it wants the microbes to mineralize nutrients. It wants the microbes to help with disease suppression. It wants the microbes to help with other soil functions. So the plant is controlling its needs and its daily routine, let's say it like this, with the help of the microbes. And it's feeding the microbes because it says, now I want to flower, I need more phosphorus, so I feed, let's say, Bacillus subtilis, which is a kind of bacteria, and Bacillus subtilis will leach out phosphorus from the mineral soil, from the clay, from the sand particles, and will consume that phosphorus, build it into its own biomass, and later on, when this bacteria dies, the leftover can be consumed by the plant. So the plant is controlling this process, but it needs a tool. It's the same like if you have a good mechanic, but he doesn't have a toolbox, then he cannot repair his tractor. But if he has a toolbox, then he can work on and make the machine run again. And it's the same with the plant. The plant needs the toolbox, the plant needs these microbes, a healthy ecosystem, a healthy microbiome in the soil, and then it can really live a good life without too much stress. And if it's good, is in good nutrition and is healthy, then it even can suppress diseases and can suppress pests, for example. So what we did in the last centuries is that we have taken the responsibility from the plants. Like, we can do that much better. We make a bigger plant from you, out of you, because we feed you with a lot of nitrogen, a lot of phosphorus. So we shovel the nutrients to the plant, so it can be a big plant. It's a bit like comparing mineral fertilizer for plants with fast food for people. So if I don't have to work for my food, but I'd only have to drive by and put my window down, and then I order some fast food, then I will be a successful body. I will be a successful organism because I will weigh like 150 kilogram. But being successful in weight, in biomass production, is not necessarily being successful in health. So when humans consume a lot of nutrients in form of fast food, or plants consume a lot of nutrients in the form of mineral fertilizer, it's more or less the same. But what we should do instead is feeding compost and vermicompost to plants and feeding apple and vegetable to humans. So they are not that like 150 kilogram, but they live much longer and they can work much better, and they can produce, have a much higher productivity. And that's the same with the plants. So fast food for human is mineral fertilizer for plants. An apple or vegetable, fresh vegetable, for humans is compost and vermicompost for plants. Let's see the final product, so what the earthworms create. So this is earthworm compost. We call it biohumus. This is a premium product because it's sieved to 3 millimeter. And this is really where we have all the microbes in and all the activity that we are expecting as a good result. So again, what's inside? It's nutrients, it's nutrient availability, it's the microbes, biggest thing, microbial biodiversity, and we see the phytohormones. So phytohormones are chemical substances that the plants produce themselves. For example, if they want to grow in a certain direction, they produce hormones and put the hormones in the area of the cell where it should multiply. But these hormones can also be recognized by the plant from the outside and stimulate growth. Typical example, if you have an earthworm burrow and you see a root growing into the earthworm burrow, and then it starts to explode. It starts to grow super fine hair roots and covers all the earthworm burrow. Why does it do that? Because it has it's like winning in the lottery for the plant. It has all what it needs. It has room to grow because it's a hole. It has the earthworm burrow is covered with earthworm compost, so it doesn't collapse when water is coming in. And so therefore it has the nutrients from the vermicompost, it has the microbes from the vermicompost, it has the air from the room, it has room to grow, and it has the phytohormones. And the phytohormones are actually not produced by the earthworms themselves, but by Pseudomonas bacteria. And these bacteria, they live on the mucus, they live on the slime, and in the slime which the earthworm is covered. You have to imagine earthworms have to breathe, they need oxygen, but they do not have any lungs like we have, but they breathe through their skin. So it's the same, they need a slimy skin as we have it in our noses, for example, and this slime is called mucus. And these Pseudomonas bacteria, they live there, and they produce these phytohormones like auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin. So you see, the vermicompost really is a package full of agents, full of beneficial characteristics. And why can we say what we say? Because we always say vermicompost is the best fertilizer of the world. Why can we say that? Because we produce it? No, because vermicompost is the material which plants know since 100 million years. So the plants are all adapted to this product. The plants that we know now, they are adapted to this product. They can use all the benefits and take advantage from it. And all the plants, like say it, no, I don't want to eat earthworm poops, I think it's not a nice product, they all died out. Yeah. So it's that simple. So the plants know the product, and the plants can use the product and take advantage of all the characteristics.